Welcome back to Curatorial Knits. This is a knitting podcast or vlog by me, Lily, and I'm an art curator based in the Bay Area in Northern California. I'm here today to talk about so many cast-ons and a pretty big deal for me, finished object, and also some really exciting plans that I have in the works. I'll also be announcing all of the details for the test knit for this item that I'm wearing right now. And we'll get into just so many amazing things that are happening in our knitting community. Before we get started with that though, I wanted to talk about something really quick at the top. I realized that I started this knitting podcast 3 years ago now, and this is our 32nd episode, which is super exciting. And it's important to me for a couple reasons. One of which is that I used to talk a lot at the beginning of the podcast about my kind of struggles or encounters with this idea of perfectionism. And it's still something that's a part of my making, kind of moving through this idea of kind of perfectionism and dealing with that. And I had this moment recently talking with one of my amazing kiddos who was super frustrated with a project that they were working on that was not going as they had planned. And fellow parents out there will probably recognize this as well. Sometimes you say things to small people and to kiddos that you actually should be saying to yourself. I don't know. I don't think I'm alone in that. And so as I was coaching and trying to kind of help my child through this really, really frustrating moment, I said, well, perfect isn't the same as excellent. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk about this on Curatorial Knits because that is exactly it. Whenever I talk about perfectionism on here or on Instagram, I absolutely get comments which are super valid, and I totally get where they're coming from. I used to 100% think of the term in these ways as well, where folks say, well, I need someone to be perfect if they're going to be my brain surgeon, right? 100%. Perfect and correct are their own category of thing, right? But when we're talking about perfectionism, we're actually talking about something that has much more to do with its kind of like not so cool cousins, anxiety, procrastination, like deep-seated worry. Basically, those are much closer to what perfectionism is as a modality of kind of interacting with the world than like achievement, excellence, exactingness, right? You can be exacting and not struggle with perfectionism, I believe. Perfectionism is really this kind of, for me at least the way it manifests, is this real fixation on a specific either way something needs to be done according to a preconceived plan, mostly arbitrary most of the time, or an outcome that has been idealized or kind of maybe overinflated. So the great thing about knitting or any other craft or creative endeavor is that a lot of times it gives us access to understand our own sets of expectations and to move through them and to move through any sort of procrastination or anxiety that we might have around a final outcome and be present in the presence of making, if that makes sense, in the process of making. And so over the course of the last 3 years, I feel like that's something that I've really grown into and deepened my understanding of. And while knitting for me is absolutely about the aesthetic celebration of a color, of a yarn, of a fiber, of the history of where the yarn comes from, the stories that we're able to tell, the community that grows out of making something together, all of that is so rich and so valuable and so important. But also on a very personal level, I have absolutely grown as a person. And I don't know if 3 years ago I would have said that same line to my kiddo. Perfect doesn't always mean excellent. And I think that I'm even more deeply understanding that process for myself because of my first foray into garment design. So with that, the philosophical side of things is kind of to a close, but I did want to comment on it however briefly or succinctly that I could, because I really have seen a change and a kind of personal growth moment that's come out of this experience for me. Making this podcast, talking to you all about it, and also just being present with my own knitting and making and creativity. So with that, I'll segue on to what I'm wearing. This is the Curator sweater, and it's my first sweater design. I designed a hat late last year, or I designed it about a year ago, but I published the design late last year, and that was so much fun, and it really gave me the confidence to explore garment design. I was really particularly interested in working with a what's called a European shoulder, which is a knitting construction that I had played with a couple times once in a cardigan design, and I really wanted to explore how I could use this construction to make a garment that I could raise my arms in, huzzah, here we go, and move in really freely, and also that I felt like was very sophisticated and could be worn to my job as an art curator in San Francisco. So let's talk a little bit about it, shall we? This is knit in the amazing Sonder yarn Luxe, Sport Luxe, held with one strand of mohair. I knit mine on a size 6 needle, but as I have been saying, like in all of the writing of this pattern, like at every needle point change, I keep using this phrase that I completely snagged from my Peloton bestie, Cody Rigsby, and those of you who know. And that phrase is, you do you, boo. Like whatever needle you need to achieve gauge, like do not get caught up, and the fabric that you enjoy, right? Don't get caught up in my numbers necessarily. So I used a size 6. I love the fabric. I'm going to hold up my swatch again because it's super, super drapey, as you can see. Sonder yarn was a huge part of kind of the making of this garment because I really played around with some of the fibers when I went to their booth at one of the events around Rhinebeck last year. And I was just so excited about the fabric that was created from these two yarns. And so I knew that that was something I wanted to explore further. And my sample here is knit up in the color Personal Space in both the sport and the mohair. And I think it's delightful. It's kind of springy, which is perfect for today. We always have this week, like at the end of February, early March in the Bay Area, which is like our kind of fall spring, or almost even fall summer, where it gets to like the mid 60s or even like maybe even like low 70s. We had one week where it was 70, and people just go crazy and they're so excited. And then of course like March and April like descend, and it's, a whole thing, but it's a really, really beautiful moment. And anyway, it just feels very spring-like, and I'm really happy to be wearing this. I've worn it all day. I went with my husband to one of our neighbors has this beautiful magnolia tree that's in full bloom, and we did a couple photos of it to put up for the test call. So the test call, I'm so excited. If you have been following me for a while, then you'll know that one of the ways that I got involved in the knitting community, to the extent that I have, is by doing test knits. I love the community of the test knit. For me, definitely learning new skills and, getting to knit a pattern early are super kind of fun perks. But for me, the real reason that I've done tests and that I've enjoyed the tests that I've done is the community that's grown up around them and making something beautiful together. And that's really my phrase. Like that's why I'm doing this. This is what I love. So what I am going to be doing for the test knit for the Curator sweater, and I'll go into kind of more about the construction and everything in just a little bit. I realize I kind of cut myself off there. But for the test knit, just so everybody has all the information, first of all, the link to the Google form to submit is right down below. So you just go to the little description box, hit the down arrow here on YouTube, and you'll see the link. I also sent the test link out to everyone who's on my mailing list. If you'd like to join the mailing list, it is super chill. This is the first newsletter I've sent, and I will probably just send maybe one a month. I really want it to be an email that you look forward to opening. So it will be pretty rare and just full of things that I like or that I'm looking at. Maybe a link to my latest video if you aren't a subscriber, and just kind of bits and bobs that are worth looking at, I think. So the test itself will run through the first week of May. I would love finished garments, but the kind of minimum requirement is the finished yoke and one sleeve. I am really, really excited to announce that in addition to what we had for the beginner's welcome hat, which was a fun little Instagram side chat going, I'm also going to be hosting 2 Zoom knit nights, and I really hope that that's something that's exciting for people. It is not required. You do not have to be on Instagram. You never have to come to a Zoom call you don't want to be on. I know a lot of us also do that for work, so if that is not a joyful space for you, I totally understand. And again, you do you. And I'm just really excited about running the test, actually. I had a really great time doing that with the beginner's welcome hat, and it was so fun too, just seeing people's yarn come in and what they want to do, and folks just asking lots of different questions that were tangentially related to the pattern. The pattern itself will be a Google Doc, and I will check comments once a day. The pattern has already been professionally tech edited and graded. I did a first grade myself, and I was definitely feeling good about it, but I really needed and wanted someone else to double check all my numbers. I have not gone to any sort of design school, and so I really wanted that double check. The professional that I'm working with is truly amazing, and I am so delighted to be working with her. I could not recommend more, just kind of having someone walk along with a first-time designer. If you have any questions about her, please be in touch. I'd love to sing her praises even more. And what I found particularly helpful, though, about going through the grading process is that it really helped me understand the construction of the garment more. So let me take you through it. This is a top-down sweater, and it's made by first knitting a back panel, which I'll display once again if I can, and I'll put in maybe a little picture. So the back panel is made with increases to make a trapezoid, and then 2 bands are created over these shoulders. And I call them shoulder bands because they really are just knit straight for the most part before you widen out into the neck. They come up over your shoulder, all right? So we're coming up and over the shoulder, and then we're picking up these stitches for the sleeves. Then the sleeve shoulder caps, the shoulder caps are then created with raglan increases. The neck line is extended and brought together in the center and joined in the round. And then you're basically just working a raglan. Okay, so there's a lot of different things happening And it's definitely something where I have a diagram that in the pattern, which I think really, really helps to kind of envision what the shapes are that you're making, because while it's not intuitive at first, once you see, oh my gosh, I've made the top of a shoulder. This is almost like a short row cap, right? Like a set-in sleeve might have, but you're able to do it all in the round. So what that means is that I think for me, one of my biggest struggles, and I've spoken about this at length in a lot of sweater designs, is the difference between the measurements I'm looking at for my shoulders and the measurements I'm looking at for my, like where I want the sweater to be right under my arms, and then where I want it to be around my bust. And that is the other fun part. So after you've joined in the round and done your increases, just like you would on a raglan, you're basically done when you split for those sleeves, right? Which is kind of, again, under your arms. But once that's done, for those of us who have, more than maybe 2-inch difference between our upper chest and our full bust, I have some bust darts. And I am now fully obsessed with bust darts. I think that they add such a elegant drape to particularly this gauge of fabric. I'm so glad that I figured them out. It's not overly complicated. It's super straightforward, and I think it makes a really big difference in the kind of elegance and flow of the garment. There's another kind of sneaky thing that I did as well. I've mentioned in other process videos about the sweater that in doing some research and scoping out some pretty schmancy knitwear and some designer shops, I always noticed how much both longer in the back, but also wider in the back a lot of these sweaters were. And so to kind of create that, what I've done is make, again, there'll be a few more stitches on the back panel than on the front panel of the sweater. But in addition, these sweet cables that run alongside here have one stitch that continues all the way down into the ribbing. That purl stitch that continues all the way down creates basically like a kind of sneaky little seam frame. So there's this really kind of, it's a very, not a very drapey, but it's a fabric with movement, right? But then it has this geometric shape that's kind of straight in the middle. And I think that juxtaposition creates a very sophisticated look that I'm very happy with. I use twisted rib, or half twisted rib rather, on all the finishes. I also have the arms coming down quite long to my knuckles. Those are options. I will also say I think that the cable detail is, for me, like really lovely, but also optional. So if that's something that you're not interested in doing, totally. I'd like to see maybe a couple, at least the test pieces that don't have the cables, and make sure that that all looks good too. What else can I say? If you have questions, please put them in the comments. If you have feedback, of course, I'd love to see that too. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should say about the piece. All of the details on sizes and dimensions and all the particulars for the test knit are in the form linked below. And this video will post on Saturday, March 1st, and I will be looking at all the forms that come in on Monday and Tuesday. So, and then probably close everything down on Wednesday is my plan. So it'll be a kind of a shorter call, but I want to make sure people have the information that they need. All the yardage is also there too, though. So if you are someone who's not excited necessarily about a test knit, but you're super excited about the pattern, you can check out all the yardage estimates, which are also at that link. And I think that's it for the Curator sweater. I'm just so thrilled that it's done. Like I said, I've been wearing it all day and I'm really don't want to take it off. I've been putting off wearing it because I wanted to make sure it was nice for the first photos. Anything else in terms of process? Oh, I definitely, I loved working with my tech editor, and I am so glad that I had the time that I had. She was also ill for more than 3 weeks, I think. So that did create like a huge amount of personal anxiety because I had created these arbitrary deadlines for myself. And that is another place where I was kind of coming up against that, like, oh, I had this idea of how this was going to go. It's not going this way. And then when you really think of it, like, well, what are the real consequences for this? Kind of none. Kind of just my own ideal of where I wanted to be on specific days. But I'm really glad that I just went with the flow, and because I was able to create something that I'm really excited to share and really proud of the process. So thank you all, and thanks to everyone who's been cheering me along on this journey. I'm super stoked to be here, and I'm really, really excited to, as I said, share this with you and to have this amazing community build happening during our test, and then even more folks being able to spend their time and their talents with this piece when it's published later on this year. So thank you all. I appreciate you. Should I talk about everything that I did while I was grading and waiting for this to be done? There are no more finished objects. I just cast things on. Should I go for it? I'm not really sure how y'all think about me once I do, but it's true. Where should we start? Oh, well, let me start with something that I'm not sure. I know I'm going to finish it, but I might have to wait for a few months. Yeah, I said months. Maybe more than that. This is the Scotty sweater by Petit Knit. I love it. I am very excited about it. It fits like a gosh darn dream. I cast it on in Nutidin, which, as you'll see, has started a whole reignited my love affair with Nutidin. It's such an incredible process and product. I was absolutely 100% told. Every single Ravelry page, every time I've seen this knit by someone on a podcast, everyone says the embroidery takes longer than the sweater. Did I believe them? Sure. Did I think it would still take as long as it has? Absolutely not. I 100% underestimated not just how long it takes, but for me and my personal making rhythm, it is so hard for me, you guys. It is so hard for me to focus. I will also say that Nutidin is amazing at so many things. It is a terrible thing to do this with. What have I done? I think it looks beautiful, but you can absolutely see where in many spots the black is just so delicate. And so it started like nestling into the main color really so much so that there's one where you can see the main color really come up over the embroidery there. The blue, of course, does not do that. I'll put the proper names below. I love this color so much. But it does not nestle in as much. The other thing about this is such an incredible product. I shouldn't say product. What is it? Material. But this Total Morker, which is so beautiful, is also so delicate. It's like literally knitting, or in this case, embroidering with a cobweb. So you really can't pull it, and each stitch I'm doing, why am I doing this to myself? Each stitch that I'm doing, I can only hold like a little bit of the Nutidin. Could I have used a different yarn? Yes, 100%. It just never occurred to me that it would be this frustrating. All of that said, I did knit this for a specific intention. I was hoping to wear it to a Burns Night celebration. And so I'm thinking what I'm going to do. So what I've done is all of the vertical lines have been embroidered on the back, on the sleeves, and the front. So all I need to do now that looks quite pretty. Ugh. All I have to do now are the horizontal lines. But, oh, Lord have mercy. I just can't make myself do it right now. I just can't. It's like I got to the end of the verticals and I was like, I'm done. So I have all of my spots marked. I know it's going to look beautiful, but I might just be putting this away and then finish it. And this as kind of my product knit for next year's Burns Night. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. I love the shape of this, by the way. This is I mentioned before, I think it's a Petit Knit pattern. It has a set-in sleeve. It is has these great balloon sleeves. I posted about this on Instagram because I was asked Anna recently from the great Atelier podcast was in town in the Bay Area, and we got together for a really lovely little knit afternoon, and her lovely mama asked the folks at the table what your what was it like? It wasn't guilty pleasure. It was like what your or secret shame, like the thing that you wouldn't really tell anyone that you did with your knitting. And one of mine is that for sleeves, I kind of just go for it. I don't pay very close attention to sleeve decrease rates, often because I usually like mine to stay a little bit wider, a little bit longer, and then come in. But yeah, I really am bad at that. That said, I'm so glad I actually paid attention to all of the decreases for these sleeves because, of course, the rate was right on, and they also get much larger at the end before you bind in for the cuff, or bind off for the cuff. So you bind off and then pick up to knit your cuff, which I think makes for a really neat finish on this. Anyway, super fun project, I will say, until I got to the embroidery, which... Oh man, it was pretty funny though. Whenever my family, I was doing a lot of this knitting, sitting on the couch downstairs, or not knitting, the embroidery part, sitting on the couch downstairs. And my dear husband and children would just try to talk to me about something, and I would just be so exasperated about what I was doing that I would take any excuse to get up and help someone, or oh, do you want a drink of water? That means I can put this down. Which usually when I'm sitting and knitting, I'm I'm sure you guys can figure it out. I'm gonna focus. But no, this was definitely the opposite. I should talk a little bit more about, in addition to, so the Nutidins that I use, the black and then the bright blue. For the body, I use the natural white. Do I have any left in here? Ooh, no, I think I put it away. I used natural white, but then I also held it with a strand of the Isaïr, which, thank you, someone corrected my pronunciation of that, I think, a couple times ago, but it was the Isaïr mohair, which I love. And so that's what's created, and that's in the color Champagne. So this is a natural white Nutidin with one strand of Isaïr Champagne for the body. And yeah, you guys can kind of see the shape there. It's really cute. We'll see how long it takes me to do those horizontal stripes, because there's so much more fun stuff that I'm working on right now. So I cast that on, and I also cast on my Colorwork piece, which was so fun. And I did make some fairly I don't know how major, but I made some fairly major modifications based on what I know about other patterns I've made by this designer. So this is the Alpenbloom Tea collar and Alpenbloom or Autumnal Bloom, is that right? Autumn Alpine for the Colorwork. Basically, Boyland Knitworks, Caitlin Hunter, came out with a t-shirt pattern for this Colorwork design. And then she came out with the, what's it called? With like a full length sleeve version. And what I did was kind of mash the two patterns together a little bit. I bought them both and I used the t-shirt cast on with this really lovely lace. And then I used the chart and the body numbers from the other pattern. The other thing that I did is I tried this on a lot, and I knew that I needed to split for sleeves before the pattern wanted me to. I'm not a swancho gal. As we all know, I need to be able to lift my arms. And so what I did is I split for sleeves rather, right where the bottom leaves start. So down here. And then I cast on another little set of stitches and I made a little Colorwork motif on the underarms. In some ways just so I wouldn't have crazy long floats, but also just to kind of keep that going. And then I kept going for the body, and I'm so glad I did, because if I had split for sleeves down here, I just don't think I would wear the garment as much. And I'm really happy with it. I'll talk a little bit more about the yarn. It's going to be a really nice light piece, I think. I am using, for my main color, this is stash I got for originally to do a Andrea Mowry spin cycle piece. This is 100% hand spun Kashgora yarn. The color is Pamirs. It's a sport weight, and it's by the Cashmere People yarns. I have some thoughts about this yarn. It is so luxe. It is incredibly soft and very airy and very, very beautiful. It is also very inconsistently spun. I believe it's mostly hand spun. In fact, isn't there someone's face on it? Yeah, I'm sure it's 100% hand spun yarn. And so I'm thinking this is gonna puff up nicely. I saw my friend Megan and I was knitting on this, and she was like, well, what was your swatch like? And I said, that wasn't the vibe. This was not the vibe of this cast on. This was literally like I need to do a spin cycle Colorwork sweater. I have this in my stash and my queue. I'm ready to go, and I just went for it. I did measure my gauge on my short rows, and I was right on. So yeah, I'm not really sure what it's going to look like once it's blocked, but I've noticed it does seem to puff up a little bit more, so I'm hoping that gives the stitches a little bit more kind of evenness to them, and that they can kind of, I don't know, nestle in a little bit closer to each other with that. The yarn for the Colorwork I'm very excited about. So this is the spin cycle colorway called Thin Line, and it was a one-off they did. And the reason that I bought it is because I really like the pen set that it was based on. It's based on this group of Pentel pens that are just like so beautiful, and they're all in these kind of deep inky colors. And what I did though, I will be honest, is I got very attached to my color pace, and so I did micromanage my color like pretty extremely. I divided up each skein into very kind of mini balls of transitional color. And then I did dive into some of my scraps of dyed in the wool for the middle portion, which is like very, very light pink and light green. I also held the dyed in the wool, which is technically a sport weight, but it's quite thin for sport or quite light for sport. I held it with a mohair, which helped to do a couple things. First, it bulked out the color work really nicely, and I think that it really kind of adds to that. But the other thing that it did is that it allowed me to make the transitions in color really, really smooth. So it's really hard to find where one stops and the other ends, and that's because I do a lot of holding one color of mohair, switching the color of the dyed in the wool, but keeping the original mohair with it, and then doing that again and again and again. So it really softens out those transition lines and creates this kind of blending, kind of halo effect, or blending effect based on the halo of those mohair fibers. So yeah, really, really love this one. I just think it's a really happy, springy knit, and it reminds me so much, actually. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to show you right now. Just a second. Okay. Here we have, I'm so glad I did this. I thought about it and I was like worried I was going to forget, but I totally remembered because of the colors of that. So I was talking about the weather in the Bay Area right now, and we just had the most incredible bloom of our anemones in my garden, and I just had to like show you guys. Look at how beautiful these are. And now look at these tiny, beautiful little buds. Can you see that? It's just wait for it to focus. Oh my gosh. They are so stunning. And I got myself a whole little arrangement. There's so many in the garden right now. So I'm just kind of showing off, sorry. But it just made me so happy. We did a huge garden muck out and dug up all the beds. And the ground was so wet. It was right after another one of these huge rains that we've had. And my husband and I were both like, why is this so hard? And then I remembered, because the dirt is full of water, like all of our soil, we were amending it with more compost and, worm casings and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, it's so heavy because it's full of water. But I'm so glad we did, because just the outcomes have been amazing. I can't wait for even more of this to come this spring. And those colors do really, really remind me of everything going on in here. So this is really fun. This is really now that I'm in stockinette land, this is my train knitting, and I'm hoping I'll be done in the next week or so. So that's really fun. I think I said really fun way too many times. I apologize. And then, because I was getting so frustrated with my Scotty sweater, but I was still absolutely loving working in Nutiden, I went back to that Nutiden stash, and I'll tell you, I got some good stuff, babes. I got some good stuff. And I was also completely in love with the knit along being hosted by those twins who knit and Casey from Young Folk Knits. And oh my gosh, you guys, look at my wonderful little back panel. This is the it's Stornoway or just Stornoway? I gotta correct myself again. Stornoway. Why can't I say that? That's right, Stornoway. The Stornoway sweater, and it's by Coco Amore Knits. I haven't knit any of her patterns before, but I've seen them and they do look quite beautiful. And this is all in Nutiden, and I am so enjoying it. This also, it's knit on size like 7 needles, and it is so fast. And it's like a really nice kind of instant gratification knit so far. I'm really, really happy with it, and I love the color combination as well. It's going really beautifully. So yeah, super happy about that. I'm done with the first set of increases on the back panel, which have this little ridge of main color, which I will say was a little bit of a like juggle to do with Newton, because of course it was like breaking that and then kind of coming back to it, but it was actually pretty straightforward. And now that that's done, I'll just go back and forth for the rest of the panel before I go to the front sections. And I am working this up in one strand of this beautiful shade of Newton, and I'll put the proper names below in the description because I do not trust myself to say them properly. And then I'm using 2 strands because, I mean, remember, each of these lots, I guess, each of these lots of the Newton pencil roving yarn is unique. So there's really a difference in the weight of them as well. So I'm holding 2 strands together of this really beautiful blue. And this blue has a lot of reddish brown undertones in it, which I think is picking up quite nicely there. And I think it goes really, really well here as well. They're cool red tones in both cases, right? And I think they speak to each other really eloquently. So that's just a really fun little, just for kicks, knit. And I think I did that section in like one afternoon with a cup of tea, and then in the evening after the kids were in bed. So it's coming along quickly. And then my 4th whip, eek, I know. But I have gone back to my pressed flowers cardigan just in time for spring. And I'm loving it. I've just done 1 flower, I guess. I thought I did more. But yep, got my sleeve going. And now that I've remembered the pattern, I'm excited for this. So this will definitely be ready for the warmer months. And oh, I just love it. Really happy with that. And did I mention the yarn for this? I did not. This is such a fun combination. I have Magpie Fibers Sport yarn in this beautiful color, which is much more kind of dark gray than it's coming out more green here. There it goes. It's looking close to what I'm wearing, but it's actually much darker and much more gray. And I'm holding that with, oh, I love this. This is from A Verb for Keeping Warm. It's floating in the colorway, I want to say Bay Bridge, Marine Layer. But it reminds me of the bridges because of that amazing international orange, which is like the Golden Gate, and then the white and gray of the Bay Bridge. So really beautiful. And I'm glad that I was a little disappointed in myself in not finishing this last year, but to be honest, I'm kind of glad I waited until I was super excited about it, because I am super excited about it. And speaking of excitement, I have a swatch that I want to share. I am super stoked because when I was done knitting this and kind of stuck into all of the numbers and grading and working on a few language shifts, I knew I wanted to knit another version of the sweater with my testers, and I knew I wanted to make one, and I wasn't sure what yarn I was gonna use or what I was gonna do. And then I realized that I could make one in a very different size, and actually make one for my husband. So because the way that the Curator sweater is knit, it's really great for shoulders, for shoulder fit. And that's one of the things that I think will be really helpful to make it a sweater that's really usable for lots of different body shapes. And because for my version, I added those size 1 bust darts, la-di-la, those are totally optional. And I'm excited to be able to kind of show the flexibilities and the different expressions of the Curator sweater. So all of that to say that I swatched for a version for my husband, which I'm really excited about. And I gave him 2 options. He wanted something very dark, and I said, great. It's getting lighter and lighter here every day, and I'm happy to knit that for you. And so I knit a swatch. This is also in Sonder Yarns Luxe Sport, held with their mohair, but 2 different colors of mohair. So I'm not sure how the camera is going to react to this. Oh, yes. Thank you, camera. So, wait, the light is now just going straight through. So let me try this. Oh, there, that's better. So we've got 2 options. We have black on black. So this is the black mohair with a black Luxe Sport with a black mohair. And then above, we have black Luxe Sport, but with this dark, dark navy mohair. And truly, I love it. I'm pretty sure he's gonna pick it. It also softens the starkness of the double black, but it's not like in your face. And my guy has kind of dreamy blue eyes, so I think that he's going to want the one with blue, and I'm really excited about it. So I'll be casting this on to knit with the testers, and I'm really excited to be knitting alongside folks as we're all in the pattern together, and also to be knitting something that's outside of my size range completely, because I do have some yarn set aside for another version for me that I think I'll do without cables, and I think I might do in the next size up and make it super oversized. So that's kind of what my debate was. But I think it'll be more rewarding to knit something that's not even close to my size for him. And then maybe he'll be in the pictures with me. I think that would be super fun. We'll see if we can talk him into it. Oh, but it's just so pretty. I'm so in love with this yarn combination. Oh, and I just heard that we will have a discount also for testers on the yarn. So if you want to use the Sonder yarn for the test, that code will be included in for all the testers as well. So that's kind of fun. But I'm also really excited to see how people express the pattern in all sorts of different fibers and materials. So the other fiber that I'm excited to knit with this summer is a linen and silk blend, and I think that could be really, really pretty. And I'm excited to see all of, again, the best part of the Beginner's Welcome Hat experience for me was seeing how people riffed on it and all the different ways that people wore them and used them, and it's really the total cheesy earnest joy of this part of the knitting community for me, is feeling like you're a part of someone else's experience, which is really special. And I'm really, really grateful to have that in my life. I think that's all. Gosh, I've been speaking so fast, I think, especially for me. I feel like usually I'm a slower talker, but whew. I've just been running through this one. I am really excited about all my makes right now. Hi, folks. So obviously we're in a different moment in time. The camera kept rolling, I kept talking, but for some reason the audio just completely spun out on me for the closing of the podcast. But it's about 8 hours later. My kids are asleep. It's after pizza night, so I definitely changed so I wouldn't get delightful pizza hands on my beautiful newly finished sweater. But I did just want to hop on really quickly to close things out, to kind of end with our usual departure gesture, just of gratitude for you guys, and also appreciation for putting yourselves out there into the world with the things that you do. And particularly in this moment in time in the United States right now, and how that may be impacting you and your knitting or your crafting or your making and your creativity, because it's certainly impacting me. And I just want to assure you that your creative work is still incredibly important, not just for the real and significant self-care that it might provide, but also because the stakes of where we are right now as a culture and society depend on us continuing to make art. And I know that might sound a little heavy, but stay with me. Some of you who have heard me talk about things like this before know that I did a lot of work in political theory. Academically, I'm an trained art historian, but a lot of my work is about the intersections between how political theorists think and talk about creative spaces or the public sphere, and how we relate to each other within a kind of community. And the primary way that a lot of us do that is actually through our creativity and through our making. And it might be making an object, it might be creating a space, it could be, owning a restaurant. There's all these different ways that people express themselves in a way that brings others together and that creates common experience that's about a shared reality. And a shared reality of shared truths is what is so important in order to do all of the other political work that we do in the world. It's kind of hard for me to talk about. So much happened just today, even just since I was filming earlier in the news, and it feels like wave after wave, this dissolution of so much that I have loved and that people very close to me have given their lives to, in terms of the idea of the United States. And I hope you'll forgive me, but now I'm going to talk about that for just a quick minute, because it is really significant to me that the idea of what our country is, the country that I've lived in for my whole life, and that I have learned about and cared about and studied in graduate school, the ideas of a democracy in the massive scale that we have is so extraordinary. The idea that power should not just be for a few people, but should actually be disseminated amongst everyone, that everyone should have a say, is just as revolutionary now in many ways as it was at the founding of the United States, and in many ways also just as ephemeral, just as unmade. It's not done. It's a project, it's an idea, it's a process, and all of the institutions that we've created over the past more than 200 years have been about trying to extend that project and include more people in it. And as much as there are so many people who probably disagree with me and who I have very lovingly disagreed with over, my entire adult life about how things get done in our country and why they get done and for whom, we still all believed the same things for so long. And so seeing all of that fray and dissemble in front of our eyes is obviously really challenging and traumatic. And even from my incredibly protected space living in California with the resources and background that I have, it is still incredibly difficult. And so in these moments, it can sometimes be an existential question to ask, why are we still talking about knitting? Why am I still spending my time working with art and artists? And the reason is actually because that is still imperative. Because the work that we do in public life, in working together and creating communities of folks from different backgrounds and who live different experiences and everyday lives than us, all of that is the same work. The creativity that we express and the connections that we make are still important. And it's not just because I say so, but there's an amazing body of literature and democratic political theory that is that's not democratic in terms of the political party, just the idea of representational government, right? Democracy with just the biggest, widest understanding of what that means. And all of these writers and thinkers, they all agree that how we show up and create public spaces is important, and how we connect with each other is important. And my ride or die, the woman I wrote my dissertation about, this incredible theorist named Hannah Arendt, her quotation I am just holding on to so tightly these days, which is that art and culture and making things in the world are what she calls what makes life bearable and meaningful. And so I just invite us all to kind of hold on to that in our making, to know that the work that we're doing in our creative adventures is important and is valuable and is part of the larger work that we're doing to look out for our neighbors, to write to our representatives, to call our representatives, to show up in person at events, to defend our friends and neighbors. So I know that's a little heavy, but we're all friends here. And I know that it's also really important to me to acknowledge my own background in this and my own place in trying to make the world a safe space for creative adventures, for disagreements, for practicing the act of judgment, of clarity, of looking at things and sharing the same reality and the same truth. And art is a great place to do that, because as much as we can all have different interpretations of what something means, we can all see what it is. And that's so valuable and it's so vital. And that's why having shared cultural moments is so important. Cultural products that everybody can consume together and can understand together and see different expressions of. They're not all going to be the same, but we're all going to agree that a sleeve is a sleeve and a collar is a collar, and we're all going to know that the things are what they are, that the reality exists no matter how they're interpreted outside of that. And it's not silly or less important to do that with art and aesthetics. It's a great place to practice doing that, to make everything that is going on in the wider political sphere bearable and meaningful. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time, hopefully very soon. Bye.